Bnalli, she is the chief economist and the head of strategy at Apicorp. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. When we look at particularly the work you do at Apicorp, tell me about it's really the investment that you're looking at. How important is that?
Well, the investments are quite key. I mean, we have at Apicorp, we are looking at the investment that are needed over the next 5 years. Having long-term outlooks is quite important, but at the end of the day, somebody has to come and invest. And we provide support to the energy sector in forms of equity and debt, etc. So for us, in our investment outlook, we are looking at something around $360 billion that are needed just in the MENA region over the next 5 years, which are committed actually in oil, gas, power, petrochemicals. But the majority of those investments are needed in the oil and gas sector. And the majority of that part is actually in the upstream part of the business. So the world actually still needs a lot of oil and gas from the MENA region.
And indeed, even though we talk about the transition in the energy market, I mean, we're a long way from there. And I think that was very much part of the highlight of the discussion here too at this Energies Outlook, in terms of the fact that more investment is needed. And again, if it's not coming, I think we're probably all in danger, are we?
Well, I mean, here again, we don't want to be too alarmist. I mean, the energy sector has been going through several periods of ups and downs, and people were talking about peak supply and then peak demand, and we ended up today in a situation where climate change is actually quite high on government agendas and policymakers' agendas. At the end of the day, I think one interesting key message that was given today is the time to transition is quite long for any form of energy, and I think renewables, just like the nuclear industry, I would say, is going through a very rapid transition and taking up a lot of market shares quite rapidly in the energy sector. But here again, this was, like for the nuclear industry, very much helped by government policies. So at the end of the day, the governments are the ones and the policymakers are the ones who are actually sending the right signals for the types of industries that they want.
When we look at the outlooks, the OPEC outlook and the International Energy Agency outlook, a lot of work obviously goes into this. And these are outlooks that are very important for so many people across the sector. I'm sure you take time to look at these outlooks too. But how important is it that there's this dialogue that actually takes the time to compare them and really make sense of them?
I mean, these outlooks are key. I've been through, I've lived through the 2008 crisis, when oil prices hit $147, if you remember, in July 2008, and hit the bottom of $31 in just a matter of few months. So having a sort of long-term scheme that can enable you to make sense of the shorter-term trends is quite key, because at the end of the day, what is important is not the end point, it's a trajectory, be it in the oil, gas, or power sectors. So at the end of the day, I mean, these organizations all have different messages, of course, but it's for us investors at the end of the day to make a sense of the middle way, I would say, trajectory that these outlooks will translate into.
And of course, when we look at the role of the International Energy Forum, this role really between the producers and consumers has probably become more vital than ever over the last few years.
I think the role that the IEF has played over the last decade, it has been quite key in bringing together in the same room the producers and the consumers and facilitating the dialogue. Of course, there are a lot of things to be done, and usually one thing that we always look at in this industry is the transparency of data. But I think the world in that specific part of the value chain is quite different today than it was 10 years ago, because the Internet of Things, the satellite imaging. I mean, we see a lot of startups who are looking at whatever is available from the internet, in social media, through satellite imaging, and making sense of the number of tankers, for example, which are being traded every day. So that sort of additional transparency actually helps the work of organizations like the IEF to maintain some sort of stability in the market.
Super. Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Ethne. Thank you.